Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Archbishop Broglio, Bishop Rhodes, and Bishop Seitz. It's wonderful to be with you here in Baltimore once again. I want to start with a question on migration, of course. We heard a message this morning, the bishop's message to the Holy Father, which emphasized the church's teaching on migrants and refugees and care of the poor. It's clearly that an issue that each bishop is addressing. I'd like to ask each of you to take a moment and tell us, what are you hearing from your brother bishops?
I've certainly been hearing a great deal of concern about the situation, especially the concern is really about the people themselves and the fear that they're experiencing, the uncertainty, and this is preventing people from, bringing their children to church or to school or even to the emergency room. And so that's certainly a concern that we all share, and we as pastors would like to alleviate that fear and assure the people in the situation that we are with them.
Yeah, I think there's a remarkable unity among all the bishops. This is an issue of human dignity, and I think so many of our people who are suffering, that the gospel teaches us, especially to be compassionate, reach out to the immigrants, and just concern about their well-being. The unity of families is so important to us. The religious liberty, the right to worship of those who are in detention. So I think the bishops have a lot of concerns surrounding the immigration situation that we have today. But it's all rooted in our a love of neighbor and respect for the dignity of the human person.
For us, this issue is not an abstract one. It's a personal one, because we're pastors. We're pastors. We care about our people, and we care particularly for those who are most vulnerable, those who are most in need. That's just what the church ought to do and what it does. It's what we are called to do in the gospel. And I think you'll hear that from the bishops across the board. We all have people in our dioceses that are being swept up in this effort to go after people who are immigrants. And I say that in a very broad sense, because although what the government has been saying is we're after criminals, it's extended much more broadly than that. And so while we certainly agree that people who are some kind of threat to our community ought to be taken off of our streets, or once they're convicted, the sweep has taken up so many others and has the risk of setting aside any kind of due process, which is such a fundamental part of our nation's basic approach, that everyone has certain rights, and those rights ought to be respected with a process that allows us to ascertain whether they indeed did commit some act that was a violation of our law. And then the response needs to be proportional to that violation.
Thank you all. As you said, Bishop Seitz, you are pastors, not politicians. But I do want to ask a political question. We just had elections in this country, and usually at this November meeting, the bishops discuss the foundational document for public engagement on political issues, that's Forming Consciousness for Faithful Citizenship. I know that it's not on the main agenda, but I understand there was conversation in fraternal dialogue. Archbishop Broglio, could you tell us maybe what is happening with this document?
Well, I think the document remains a fixture of our statement as pastors regarding Catholic attitudes in public life. We're going to try, and given that few people will sit down and read a document of that length, we're going to try and make it into something that's a little more, or make part of it into something that's a little more marketable or palatable for people to read in small segments. So that's basically the way going forward. And then obviously we'll respond to specific issues as they arise.
Very good. All right, at this time, I think we're ready to take questions.
My microphone is working. And Archbishop, my question is on the political front. How strongly, as a body of bishops, are you going to come out and speak to the Trump administration's harsh immigration crackdown that's affecting many parishes and many dioceses?
Is your question directed to one of us, or? Okay. Well, as you perhaps heard, we are going to be and are working on a statement that will come out of this meeting. It's in the works right now, and we certainly, as bishops, we want to speak from who we are, and certainly we address issues of principle such as religious liberty, such as human dignity, and so on. And we'll try to stick to our foundations, if you will, in any statement that we make. But we also want it to be something that's very clear and that is rooted in the gospel. So I hope that when you see a statement, it will speak from all of those points of view. And it will also, I believe, speak to immigrants, not simply to our government. It will speak to immigrants, expressing our concern and our desire to walk with them through this difficult time in their lives and the lives of their families.
I think Bishop Rhodes wanted to respond to that question as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that on the political front, for decades, the U.S. bishops have been advocating for comprehensive immigration reform. And with the stagnation, especially in Congress, with the polarization, now is the time. I mean, we're in really a crisis situation, although we can say we've been in a crisis for a while with the immigration issue, but to be able to cross the aisle, and I hope that the church can be we're not partisan, but we want both parties to work together. And, there were times in the past few decades where that was taking place. There was at least dialogue, at least to return to that. We're talking about human lives being at stake and really important principles of our country, including not just human dignity and religious liberty. All these things intersect. And so I'm just hopeful that we can move beyond the impasse.
Archbishop Berlioz.
I would just like to add that primarily we'll be addressing the people who find themselves in difficulty themselves and also are faithful. So it will be a message of solidarity with our brothers and sisters who find themselves in difficulty and who find themselves in fear, to let them know that they are not alone, that their pastors are walking with them.
The next question goes to Mark Irons with EWTN.
Your Excellencies, we've heard some reports of detained migrants being denied access to communion. Can you talk about that? How concerning is that? And should detained migrants have access to the sacraments?
That's our Committee on Religious Liberty. We had a meeting on Monday night, and that was one of the agenda items. We're very concerned about that. Obviously, to have access to our people who are in these detention facilities, to be able to offer pastoral and spiritual care, and especially the grace of the sacraments. Now, certainly, we understand that our chaplains and our pastoral ministers, our priests, go through the normal process, of the proper protocols, but should have that access. That's an issue of religious liberty, the right to worship. One doesn't lose that right when one is detained. whether one is documented or undocumented. This is a fundamental right of the human person. So we feel very strongly about this. My own experience right now is, because of the government shutdown, the Religious Liberty Commission, and I'm on the advisory committee, hasn't been in operation because of the lack of funding. So we don't have that avenue presently. But hopefully that avenue will open again. And I think they are aware, just from the news, of our concerns. But I'm hoping to have more direct contact on this.
I will say that in contacts that I had just last week, there was an effort to explain some of the difficulties about access in terms of some of the facilities that weren't made for long-term detention, for want of a better word. There's not the same organization that there would be, and so that's obviously a concern that has to be addressed.
The next question goes to Father Reese with Religion News Service.
Question for Archbishop Berlioz and the other bishops, if you want to comment on it. The USCCB media office prior to the meeting indicated that some of the topics that would be discussed in executive session included best practices for continuing instruction in Laudato Si, the ongoing implementation of the Synod, and the apostolate of the laity. Now, these were, of course, key programs of Pope Francis, but that the reason that these were going to be an executive session was that the bishops wanted to freely and candidly discuss these topics. I guess my question is, what was so controversial about these issues that they had to be treated in executive session?
Father Reese, good to see you again. I'm not sure that that the issue is really that the confidentiality. That's part of it certainly, but it's also that there's a little more freedom to speak in executive session. And I would like to point out that we are the only bishops' conference in the world that generally our public sessions are public. Most bishops' conferences do not have public sessions. So we do like to have the ability to talk about some issues in executive session.
I think we have time for one more question. The last question goes to Kate Scanlon with OSB News.
Thanks, Jaco. Bishop Rhodes, I was hoping to get your thoughts on just this issue of religious liberty presented by ICE detainees receiving the sacraments. I know it's already come up, but there was that report that the Immigration Committee did with World Relief showing that, a huge majority of those vulnerable to deportation are either Catholics themselves or they have a family member who's Catholic. So this is a really pivotal part of this. There's obviously this facility in Chicago that's become a flashpoint in all of this, but I'm wondering if you could just speak to how are you engaging, where are the bishops in tangibly securing and protecting the rights of all ICE detainees to be able to receive the sacraments if they so need.
It really is heartbreaking. Our focus in the Committee on Religious Liberty was basically the church's right to provide charitable services for immigrants. And that was kind of our focus. We didn't really anticipate what we're facing now with the detention centers. So, but as soon as that became, something that we became aware of, that's moved to the top of the list for us. And it's heartbreaking when you think of the suffering, really. And they, especially those who've been detained, separated from families, et cetera, those who haven't committed crimes, they need spiritual support at this time. And they need the sacraments. So I think this is now at the top of our concerns. So we're doing, we'll move forward now. We just had the meeting on Monday evening about contacting our representatives and certainly the administration.
All right. Well, thank you all, especially those of you, our outgoing chair of the Committee on Migration, Bishop Seitz, and our outgoing president of the conference, Archbishop Broglio. Thank you, Bishop Rhodes, as well. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much.